Chapter 1. The Call of the Forest. In the bustling heart of the Kingdom of Amond, a young man named Dolma sat transfixed by the sight before him. From his vantage point atop the city wall, he gazed out at the Taba Forest, a verdant expanse that stretched as far as the eye could see. The trees, their canopies shimmering in the golden light of the setting sun, seemed to call to him, beckoning him to venture beyond the glimmering barrier that kept the forest's inhabitants at bay. Dolma had been drawn to the Taba Forest for as long as he could remember. As a child, he would often sit for hours on end, pressed against the barrier, peering into the shadows, his imagination running wild with visions of the strange and wondrous creatures that dwelled within. His parents had tried to dissuade him, warning him of the dangers that lurked in the forest, but their pleas had only fueled his curiosity further. Now, as he stood on the edge of the city, Dolma felt a familiar stirring in his heart. The forest had always been more than just a place to him. It was a realm of endless possibility, a world teeming with secrets waiting to be uncovered. And he was determined to be the one to uncover them. With a deep breath, Dolma tore his gaze from the forest and turned his attention to the bustling streets below. The sounds of the city, the laughter of children, the chatter of merchants, the clip-clop of hooves on cobblestone, washed over him, but they felt hollow, distant, like the echoes of a life he no longer recognized as his own. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the Taba Forest in a warm, golden glow, Dolma made a decision. He would venture into the unknown, defy the warnings of his elders, and uncover the truth that lay beyond the barrier. It was a risk, he knew, but the lure of the forest was too strong to ignore. With renewed determination, Dolma set off, weaving his way through the crowded streets and making his way towards the edge of the city. As he drew closer to the barrier, his heart raced, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through his veins. He had walked this path countless times before, but this time, he knew, would be different. Approaching the shimmering curtain of light, Dolma paused, taking a moment to gather his courage. He could feel the power of the barrier, the hum of magic that seemed to vibrate in the air around him. For a fleeting moment, he considered turning back, the caution of his elders echoing in his mind. But the call of the forest was too strong, and with a deep breath, he stepped forward, plunging into the unknown. The moment Dolma passed through the barrier, the world around him transformed. The bustling sounds of the city faded, replaced by the symphony of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of unseen creatures, and the whisper of the wind through the trees. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flora, and Dolma felt a sense of wonder and unease wash over him. As his eyes adjusted to the shifting shadows, Dolma slowly began to make his way deeper into the Taba Forest. The trees towered above him, their branches reaching skyward like grasping fingers, and the undergrowth at his feet rustled with the unseen movements of life. Everywhere he looked, Dolma saw glimpses of the strange and captivating creatures that called this place home, flashes of iridescent wings, the glimmer of scales, the distant call of a creature he could not quite place. Dolma's pace quickened, his curiosity propelling him forward. He wanted to see more, to understand the mysteries that lay hidden within the forest's verdant depths. With each step, the world around him seemed to shift and change, as if the Taba Forest were a living, breathing entity, aware of his presence and testing the limits of his courage. Yet, despite the growing sense of unease, Dolma could not turn back. He had come too far, and the lure of the forest was too strong to ignore. As the shadows lengthened and the calls of the creatures grew more ominous, Dolma pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets that had eluded him for so long. With each passing moment, Dolma felt a shift within himself, a stirring of something primal and instinctive. The forest seemed to awaken a part of him that had long been dormant, a connection to the natural world that he had never before experienced. And as he delved deeper into the verdant expanse, Dolma knew that he was on the cusp of a profound and life-altering journey, one that would test the limits of his courage and open his eyes to the wonders and the dangers that lay beyond the barrier. Chapter 2. Crossing the Threshold. Dolma's heart pounded as he stood before the shimmering barrier, its magical energy rippling before him like a curtain of light. For years, he had gazed upon this threshold, longing to step through and explore the wonders that lay beyond. But the warnings of his elders had always held him back. Now, with a deep breath, he steeled his nerves and reached out a trembling hand, pressing it against the barrier. The moment his skin made contact, a tingling sensation shot through his body, and Dolma felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins. It was as if the forest itself was calling to him, inviting him to cross over and become part of its ancient, otherworldly realm. Closing his eyes, he took a step forward, and the barrier parted before him, enveloping him in a cascade of dazzling light. When Dolma opened his eyes, he found himself in a world transformed. The bustling sounds of the city had been replaced by a symphony of unfamiliar noises, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of unseen creatures, and the whisper of the wind through the towering trees. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flora, and the shadows cast by the verdant canopy above danced and shifted around him, as if the very forest were alive and aware of his presence. Dolma stood transfixed, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer sensory overload. Every detail of the Taba Forest seemed to demand his attention, from the intricate patterns of the bark that covered the ancient trunks to the vibrant hues of the flowers that bloomed in the undergrowth. He felt a sense of wonder and unease wash over him, a potent mixture of excitement and apprehension that set his heart racing. As his eyes adjusted to the shifting light, Dolma began to make out the shapes of the creatures that dwelled within the forest. Flashes of iridescent wings and the glimmer of scales caught his eye, and he strained to glimpse the elusive beings that had so long captured his imagination. The calls of these mysterious creatures echoed through the trees, their voices rich and haunting, and Dolma found himself drawn deeper into the verdant expanse, his curiosity overriding his sense of caution. With each step, the world around him seemed to shift and change, as if the Taba Forest were a living, breathing entity that was testing the limits of his courage. The shadows lengthened, and the calls of the creatures grew more ominous, hinting at the unseen dangers that lurked within the forest's depths. Dolma felt a chill run down his spine, but he refused to turn back, his determination to uncover the secrets of this enchanted realm burning brighter than his fears. As he navigated the winding trails, Dolma encountered a dazzling array of fantastical creatures, each one more captivating than the last. He watched in awe as a towering, antlered being moved with the grace of a dancer, its massive form swaying in sync with the rhythm of the trees. Nearby, a group of diminutive, luminescent sprites flitted through the undergrowth, their delicate wings casting a soft glow upon the forest floor. Dolma felt a surge of excitement with each new discovery, his curiosity insatiable. He longed to understand the nature of these creatures, to learn the secrets of their existence and their place within the Taba Forest. Yet, as he drew closer, he sensed a growing unease, a palpable shift in the atmosphere that suggested the forest itself was aware of his presence and wary of his intrusion. The trees seemed to close in around him, the shadows deepening, and Dolma could feel the weight of the forest's gaze upon him. He knew that he was treading on sacred ground, a realm that had long been kept hidden from the outside world, and he couldn't help but wonder if his presence was an unwelcome intrusion. Still, Dolma pressed on, his determination to uncover the truth outweighing his growing sense of trepidation. He had come too far to turn back now, and the lure of the forest was too strong to ignore. With each step, he felt a deeper connection to the natural world around him, a primal awareness that seemed to awaken something within him that had long been dormant. As the shadows lengthened and the calls of the creatures grew more ominous, Dolma knew that he was approaching a critical juncture. The forest seemed to be testing him, challenging him to prove his worth and his commitment to uncovering its secrets. He could feel the weight of the decision before him, the knowledge that his next move would likely determine the course of his journey, and perhaps even his fate. With a deep breath, Dolma squared his shoulders and pressed onward, his eyes scanning the ever-shifting landscape for any sign of the wonders and dangers that lay ahead. He knew that he was on the cusp of a profound and life-altering experience, one that would push the limits of his courage and open his eyes to the mysteries of the Taba Forest. And as he stepped deeper into the verdant expanse, Dolma felt a sense of resolve and anticipation that he had never before known. Chapter 3: Wonders and Mysteries. As Dolma ventured deeper into the Taba Forest, the world around him continued to unfurl in a dazzling display of sights and sounds. Each step he took seemed to unveil a new wonder, a captivating creature, or a bewildering phenomenon that set his heart racing with excitement and curiosity. The forest floor was a tapestry of vibrant hues, with exotic flowers and otherworldly plants that seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. Dolma found himself drawn to the delicate, luminescent blooms that dotted the undergrowth, their petals shimmering as if infused with an ethereal energy. He crouched down, gently running his fingers along the velvety leaves, marveling at the alien yet alluring textures. Nearby, Dolma caught glimpses of the forest's enigmatic inhabitants, their forms darting in and out of the shadows. Flashes of iridescent wings and the glimmer of scales hinted at the presence of creatures that defied any semblance of the natural order he had known. He strained to catch a clearer view, his eyes searching the shifting canopy above for any sign of the elusive beings. As if in response to his curiosity, a series of haunting calls echoed through the trees, their rich, otherworldly tones sending a shiver down Dolma's spine. He paused, listening intently, trying to discern the origin and nature of the sounds. Were they the voices of the creatures themselves, communicating in a language he could not comprehend? Or were they the whispers of the forest, an ancient melody that only the initiated could truly hear? Dolma's mind raced with questions, each one fueling his desire to uncover the secrets of this enchanted realm. He pressed forward, his steps quickening as he navigated the winding trails, his senses on high alert for any new discovery. It was then that he encountered his first truly remarkable creature, a being that seemed to embody the very essence of the Taba Forest. Towering above him, its massive form swaying gently in time with the rhythm of the trees, was an antlered creature unlike anything Dolma had ever seen. Its skin was a tapestry of earthy hues, its antlers branching out like the intricate canopy above, and its movements were graceful and fluid, as if it were an extension of the forest itself. Dolma stood transfixed, his eyes wide with awe and wonder. He drank in every detail of the creature, marveling at the intricate patterns of its hide and the way its antlers seemed to shift and shimmer in the dappled light. He longed to approach it, to reach out and make contact, to better understand the nature of this enigmatic being. Yet, as he took a cautious step forward, the creature's head snapped in his direction, its eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made Dolma's breath catch in his throat. For a moment, they remained frozen, suspended in a silent dance of wary curiosity, each sizing up the other, seeking to discern the true nature of their encounter. Dolma felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere, as if the very forest itself had become charged with a heightened awareness of his presence. The shadows seemed to deepen, the calls of the creatures growing more ominous, and Dolma could not shake the unsettling sensation that the Taba Forest was watching him, testing the limits of his courage and his understanding. Slowly, the antlered creature turned and continued on its unhurried path, disappearing into the verdant depths of the forest. Dolma watched it go, his heart still pounding, his mind reeling with the implications of what he had just witnessed. He knew that he had glimpsed something truly extraordinary, a being that existed in a realm beyond the confines of his own understanding. With a deep breath, Dolma pressed on, his determination to uncover the secrets of the Taba Forest only growing stronger. As he navigated the winding trails, he encountered a diverse array of fantastical creatures, each one more captivating than the last. There were the diminutive, luminescent sprites that flitted through the undergrowth, their delicate wings casting a soft glow upon the forest floor. Dolma watched in fascination as they darted and danced, their movements so swift and graceful that they seemed to defy the laws of physics. He longed to reach out and touch them, to better understand the nature of their ethereal existence. In another clearing, Dolma stumbled upon a shimmering pool, its surface rippling with an otherworldly energy. As he approached, he heard a soft, melodic hum that seemed to emanate from the water itself. Peering closer, he caught a glimpse of a creature unlike any he had ever seen. A being that appeared to be part fish, part serpent, its scales glimmering like liquid gold. It moved with a fluid, undulating grace, its eyes fixed upon him with an unsettling intelligence. Dolma found himself captivated, his curiosity overriding his sense of caution as he reached out a hand, longing to make contact with this remarkable creature. But as his fingers breached the surface of the pool, the being vanished in a flash, leaving only a series of concentric ripples in its wake. Dolma withdrew his hand, a sense of frustration and wonder warring within him. He knew that he had barely scratched the surface of the Taba Forest's secrets, and each new encounter only deepened his fascination and his determination to uncover the truth. Yet, as he moved on, Dolma couldn't shake the growing unease that had settled over him. The forest seemed to shift and change around him, the shadows lengthening, the calls of the creatures growing more ominous. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Taba Forest was alive and aware, and that his presence was not entirely welcome. Still, Dolma pressed forward, his eyes scanning the ever-shifting landscape for any sign of the wonders and dangers that lay ahead. He knew that he was on the cusp of a profound and life-altering experience, one that would push the limits of his courage and open his eyes to the mysteries of this enchanted realm. And as he delved deeper into the verdant expanse, Dolma felt a sense of anticipation and trepidation that he had never before known. Chapter 4. Confronting the Unknown. As Dolma ventured deeper into the Taba Forest, the sense of unease that had been building within him only grew stronger. The shadows seemed to lengthen, and the calls of the creatures around him grew more ominous, as if the very forest itself was becoming aware of his presence and testing the limits of his courage. Yet, Dolma's determination to uncover the secrets of this enchanted realm only burned brighter. He had come too far to turn back now, and the lure of the unknown was too strong to ignore. With each step, he felt a deeper connection to the natural world around him, a primal awareness that seemed to awaken something within him that he had never before experienced. As Dolma navigated the winding trails, he encountered a series of challenges that threatened to overwhelm him. The forest seemed to shift and change, the very ground beneath his feet becoming treacherous and unpredictable. Roots and vines appeared to reach out and grasp at him, as if the forest were trying to impede his progress, and the calls of the creatures grew more shrill and unsettling. Still, Dolma pressed on, his senses heightened, his mind racing with theories and hypotheses about the true nature of the Taba Forest and its inhabitants. He knew that he was treading on sacred ground, a realm that had long been kept hidden from the outside world, and he couldn't help but wonder if his presence was an unwelcome intrusion. At one point, Dolma came across a dense thicket of thorny bushes, their branches seemingly laced with a shimmering, crystalline substance that glinted in the shifting light. As he reached out to touch one of the branches, a sharp pain shot through his hand, and he quickly withdrew, his skin blistered and raw. Dolma winced, cradling his injured hand, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. Was this the forest's way of warning him, of testing his resilience and his understanding of the dangers that lurked within? He couldn't be sure, but the message was clear. The Taba Forest was a place of power and mystery, and those who dared to venture within would have to confront the unknown with unwavering courage and determination. Undaunted, Dolma pressed on, his steps more cautious, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows for any sign of the next challenge. As he rounded a bend in the trail, he found himself in a vast, open clearing, the sunlight filtering through the canopy above and casting a warm, golden glow upon the verdant landscape. At the center of the clearing stood a towering, monolithic structure, its surface covered in a series of intricate, glowing runes that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Dolma approached the structure, his curiosity piqued, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns as he tried to decipher their meaning. As he made contact with the surface, a sudden surge of energy coursed through his body, and Dolma felt a strange, tingling sensation wash over him. The runes began to glow more brightly, and the air around him seemed to crackle with a palpable tension, as if the very fabric of the forest were about to be torn asunder. Dolma backed away, his heart racing, his mind reeling with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. What was the purpose of this strange structure, and what power did it hold over the Taba Forest and its inhabitants? He knew that he had stumbled upon something of great importance, something that could hold the key to unlocking the forest's deepest secrets. But as Dolma continued to investigate the structure, he began to sense that he was not alone. The shadows around him seemed to shift and move, and the calls of the creatures grew more ominous, as if they were warning him of a growing threat. Swiftly, Dolma turned, his eyes scanning the treeline for any sign of danger. It was then that he caught a glimpse of a massive, hulking figure lurking in the shadows, its eyes glowing with a primal, predatory intensity. Dolma's heart nearly leapt from his chest as he realized that he had attracted the attention of one of the forest's most formidable inhabitants. Dolma froze, his mind racing as he tried to decide his next move. Should he attempt to flee, to make a mad dash back towards the safety of the barrier? Or should he stand his ground, determined to confront this challenge head-on and uncover the truth that lay buried within the Taba Forest? The creature, sensing Dolma's hesitation, let out a menacing growl, its massive form emerging from the shadows and stalking towards him with a slow, deliberate gait. Dolma could feel the weight of its gaze upon him, a primal, instinctive challenge that demanded a response. Summoning every ounce of his courage, Dolma stood his ground, his eyes locked onto the creatures, his mind searching for a way to communicate, to find a common ground that might defuse the tense standoff. He knew that he was treading on dangerous ground, that one wrong move could seal his fate, but he refused to back down, his determination to uncover the forest's secrets fueling his resolve. As the creature drew closer, Dolma could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet, the very air around them charged with an electric tension. He braced himself, his muscles tense, ready to react to the slightest movement. And in that moment, he knew that he was about to face the ultimate test, a challenge that would determine whether he had the strength and the understanding to navigate the treacherous realm of the Taba Forest. With his heart pounding in his ears, Dolma steeled his nerves and met the creature's gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and defiance. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that he could not turn back, that his journey had reached a critical juncture, and that the fate of the Taba Forest, and perhaps his own, hung in the balance. Chapter 5. The Forest's Secrets Revealed. Dolma stood his ground, his eyes locked onto the massive, hulking creature that stalked towards him, its movements slow and deliberate. The air around them crackled with tension, and Dolma could feel the ground trembling beneath his feet as the creature's massive form drew closer. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as the two adversaries regarded one another, each sizing up the other, searching for any sign of weakness or vulnerability. Dolma's heart pounded in his chest, but he refused to back down, his determination to uncover the secrets of the Taba Forest fueling his resolve. As the creature let out a low, rumbling growl, Dolma felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. He knew that he was treading on dangerous ground, that one wrong move could seal his fate, but he refused to be cowed by the beast's intimidating presence. Instead, he began to take slow, measured steps forward, his hands raised in a gesture of both caution and curiosity. To Dolma's surprise, the creature paused, its deep, unsettling eyes fixed upon him with a curious intensity. Emboldened by this unexpected reaction, Dolma continued to move closer, his movements deliberate and non-threatening, his gaze never wavering from the creatures. As he drew near, Dolma began to make out more details of the creature's form, the intricate patterns of its hide, the way its massive limbs seemed to move with a preternatural grace, and the subtle shifts in its expression that hinted at a depth of intelligence and awareness that defied any conventional understanding of the natural world. Dolma felt a surge of wonder and trepidation wash over him. This was no mere beast. He realized this was a creature of immense power and complexity, a being that existed in a realm far beyond the confines of his own limited experience. And as he studied the creature more closely, he began to sense a deeper connection, a shared understanding that transcended the divide between man and animal. Slowly, Dolma reached out a hand, his movements careful and deliberate, until his fingertips brushed against the creature's coarse fur. A shiver ran through him at the contact, and he felt a surge of energy coursing through his body, as if the very essence of the Taba Forest was flowing through him. In that moment, Dolma's eyes were open to a new reality, a world of hidden truths and mystical connections that had long eluded him. He saw the forest in a new light, not as a collection of disparate elements, but as a living, breathing entity, a network of interdependent relationships that sustained the delicate balance of this enchanted realm. And at the heart of this web of life, he saw the creatures of the Taba Forest, not as mere beasts, but as integral components of a greater whole, each one playing a vital role in the preservation and perpetuation of the forest's fragile ecosystem. The towering, antlered beings, the luminescent sprites, the shimmering, serpentine creatures, they were all part of a grand, interconnected tapestry, woven together by the very essence of the Taba Forest itself. Dolma felt a profound sense of awe and humility wash over him as he came to this realization. He had thought himself a seeker of knowledge, an explorer of the unknown, but in truth, he had been a mere student, a novice in the face of the forest's ancient and inscrutable wisdom. And as he gazed into the eyes of the creature before him, he saw a reflection of that wisdom, a depth of understanding that seemed to transcend the boundaries of the physical world. It was as if the creature was imparting to him a sacred truth, a message that had been passed down through generations, a key to unlocking the very secrets of the Taba Forest. Emboldened by this newfound understanding, Dolma began to move with a newfound purpose, his steps more confident, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows for any other signs of the forest's hidden inhabitants. He knew that he was on the cusp of a profound revelation, a breakthrough that could forever change his perception of the world and his place within it. As he ventured deeper into the forest, Dolma encountered more of the enigmatic creatures, each one more captivating than the last. He watched in awe as a group of the diminutive, luminescent sprites danced and flickered through the undergrowth, their movements so swift and graceful that they seemed to defy the laws of physics. Nearby, he came across a shimmering pool, its surface rippling with an otherworldly energy. Peering closer, he caught a glimpse of the serpentine creature he had encountered before, its scales glimmering like liquid gold as it undulated in the pool's depths. This time, however, the creature did not vanish, but instead fixed its gaze upon Dolma, its eyes conveying a sense of recognition and, dare he say, a kinship. Dolma felt a surge of excitement and wonder, his mind racing with questions and theories about the true nature of these beings. What was the purpose of their existence, and how did they fit into the greater tapestry of the Taba Forest? Were they simply creatures, or did they possess a higher form of intelligence and understanding that transcended the boundaries of the physical world? As he explored the forest, Dolma began to uncover more clues about the hidden truths that lay buried within this enchanted realm. He stumbled upon ancient ruins, their surfaces covered in intricate, glowing runes that seemed to pulse with a primal, otherworldly energy. And as he studied these structures, he began to piece together a vision of a world that existed in parallel to his own, a world of magic and mysticism that had long been hidden from the prying eyes of the outside world. Yet, even as Dolma's understanding of the Taba Forest deepened, he could not shake the sense of unease that had been building within him. The shadows seemed to lengthen, and the calls of the creatures grew more ominous, hinting at a growing threat that lurked beneath the surface of this idyllic landscape. Dolma knew that he was treading on dangerous ground, that his quest to uncover the forest's secrets had brought him dangerously close to a pivotal moment that would test the limits of his courage and his understanding. And as he steeled himself for the challenges that lay ahead, he couldn't help but wonder if he was truly prepared for the revelations that were about to unfold. Chapter 6. The Return or Not. Dolma's lungs burned as he raced through the winding trails of the Taba Forest, his heart pounding in his chest. The shadows that had once captivated him now seemed to close in, their tendrils reaching out as if to ensnare him. Behind him, the ominous calls of the creatures echoed through the trees, a haunting symphony that sent shivers down his spine. Dolma knew that he was being pursued, that the delicate balance he had so carefully cultivated with the forest's inhabitants had been irrevocably shattered. As he ran, Dolma replayed the events that had led him to this desperate moment. The revelation of the forest's secrets, the profound connection he had forged with the enigmatic creatures. It had all seemed so wondrous, so full of promise. But now, he realized the true gravity of his actions, the consequences of his insatiable curiosity and his desire to uncover the unknown. Ahead, Dolma caught a glimpse of the shimmering barrier that marked the boundary between the Taba Forest and the world he had once known. A flicker of hope ignited within him, but it was quickly extinguished as he heard the thunderous crashing of the pursuing creatures behind him. Dolma's steps faltered, and he knew that he could not outrun the relentless force that pursued him. Steeling his nerves, he turned to face his pursuers, his eyes scanning the shifting shadows for any sign of the massive, hulking creature he had encountered before. As the creature emerged from the gloom, Dolma was struck by the intensity of its gaze, the raw power and intelligence that radiated from its every movement. He knew that he was no match for this being, that his fate now rested in the creature's hands. Yet, as the creature drew closer, Dolma felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. In the face of this primal, otherworldly force, his fear began to fade, replaced by a deep, profound understanding of the Taba Forest and its inhabitants. Slowly, Dolma raised his hands, palms outward, in a gesture of submission and respect. He met the creature's gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of reverence and acceptance, and to his surprise, the creature paused, its movements becoming less threatening, its attention focused on him with a curious intensity. Seizing the moment, Dolma began to speak, his words soft and measured, conveying the depth of his understanding and his desire to coexist peacefully within the forest's realm. He spoke of the interconnectedness of all living things, of the delicate balance that sustained the Taba Forest and its inhabitants, and of his newfound appreciation for the sacred truths that had been hidden from him for so long. As Dolma continued to speak, the creature seemed to relax, its posture shifting, its eyes no longer filled with the primal aggression that had threatened to overwhelm him. Dolma sensed a profound shift in the atmosphere, as if the very forest itself was bearing witness to this exchange, its ancient wisdom and power pulsing through the air around them. Emboldened by the creature's receptiveness, Dolma pressed on, sharing his vision of a world where the barriers between the human realm and the enchanted realm of the Taba Forest could be bridged, where the two could coexist in a delicate balance, each respecting and nurturing the other. The creature seemed to listen intently, its eyes never leaving Dolma's, and Dolma felt a surge of hope and connection that he had never before experienced. In that moment, he knew that he had reached a pivotal crossroads, a decision that would not only determine his own fate, but the fate of the Taba Forest and its inhabitants. Gathering his courage, Dolma took a step forward, his hand outstretched, a silent invitation for the creature to join him on his journey back to the barrier. He knew that it was a bold and risky move, but in his heart, he believed that the creature, and perhaps the forest itself, could see the sincerity and depth of his understanding. For what seemed like an eternity, The creature regarded Dolma, its gaze unwavering. Then, to Dolma's astonishment, the massive being moved towards him, its footsteps heavy and deliberate, until it stood by his side, its presence a silent testament to the trust and respect that had been forged between them. Dolma felt a surge of elation and trepidation as he and the creature began to make their way back towards the barrier. The other creatures that had pursued him seemed to part before them, their calls no longer filled with the same ominous undertones. Dolma couldn't help but wonder if they, too, had recognized the significance of this moment, the shift in the delicate balance that had been restored. As they neared the shimmering curtain of light, Dolma paused, turning to face the creature with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. He knew that this was the moment of truth, the point at which he would have to make the ultimate decision, to leave the Taba Forest behind and return to the world he had once known, or to remain within its enchanted realm, bound by the sacred trust he had forged with its inhabitants. Dolma searched the creature's eyes, seeking guidance, a glimmer of the wisdom that had so profoundly changed his own perspective. And in that moment, he knew that the choice was his to make, that the forest had bestowed upon him the ultimate responsibility to be the bridge between the two realms, the conduit through which the delicate balance could be maintained. With a deep breath, Dolma turned to the barrier, his hand reaching out to touch its shimmering surface. He knew that stepping through would mean leaving behind the wonders and mysteries of the Taba Forest, the profound connection he had forged with its enigmatic creatures. But he also knew that his journey had not yet reached its end, that the responsibility he now carried would require him to walk a path that straddled both worlds, a path that would test the limits of his courage and his understanding. As Dolma passed through the barrier, the world around him shifted, the sounds and sensations of the city rushing back to fill his senses. But even as he stood on the edge of the familiar realm, his mind was already racing, pondering the implications of his experiences and the role he would now play in preserving the delicate balance between the two worlds. Turning to look back at the Taba Forest, Dolma caught a final glimpse of the creature's towering form, its eyes meeting his with a silent acknowledgement of the bond they had forged. And in that moment, Dolma knew that he would return, that his journey had only just begun, and that the fate of the Taba Forest, and perhaps the entire world, now rested in his hands.